Oh, I love the snow, as long as I've got thermal underwear on. Wrapped up tight with a scarf, sit down in the snow.
There's nothing I can do, otherwise I'll just sit there and put the kettle on.
It was perfect, yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. If you can spend enough time there and get out into all of that countryside, and God knows there's a lot of it. It's got a lot of variety, culturally and geographically, and so it's a good place to go and spend some time in.
There's a wall that we walk past, and there are 3 very extraordinary reflections on the wall, and you either notice it or you don't, but it just was an accident of nature. The sun was hitting some windows, they were bouncing back, and they were just along this grey wall, and the 2 of us walking past it, so it was like nature decided to be an accident.
I liked being a stranger. It's a bit like, in a way, it's kind of like a Western. The stranger rides into town, hitches his horse to the post. You don't know who he is. And then you find out who he is, and then you watch him move on. It's a kind of perennial story. In America, a lot of people say, "I love your accent." Since they also spend half the time you say something and they say "excuse me" a lot because they don't understand what you've said. So it's a bit odd.
What next? This first poem is called Dogs and Bones. After a few days of war, the Sarajevo streets were a catwalk for dogs. Perfumed dogs, well-groomed dogs, dogs with cut-glass collars and not a flea between them. Their owners had left them as they left the burning city. The trash heaps became a battlefield where the lapdogs lost to an army of strays, lean-limbed and mangy with hate. Cowering and cleansed, the back-alley refugees retreated to the doorways of locked apartments, barking an answer to each unearthly whistle as the morning shells came in. One of those locked apartments where we kicked down the door, searching for a bastard sniper, and found the skeleton of an old woman, fused to a kitchen chair, yes, merged with the wood. She had starved to death, sitting next to a pantry crammed with cans of food. We spent a long time debating the crucial issue of her religion. Yakety-yak. We could get no clue from the photos that littered the place, or the needlepoint of a Knighton castle, or the 100 bottles of perfume placed around her bed. Her piously folded hands remained a secret. It was dawn before the argument died out, and we carried her into the street where dogs were fighting amid the garbage. Nothing they wouldn't risk, nothing they wouldn't eat. Who cares anyway? Who knows whether she even believed in God? By God, God will find his hands full after this war, someone said, and we fell silent, pretending not to see her silly grin, and the sudden silver glint of the can opener on its chain around her neck.
It is a bit intense. It's just the quality of the writing. You can tell on the first page, and you want to turn to the next page. Sometimes it's really hard to turn the pages, or you think, oh well, this works, but what about this, and maybe we should change that. With this one, I just kept reading it.
This is beginning after everything. After I buried my mother, under fire I sprinted from the graveyard. After the soldiers came with my brother wrapped in a tarp, I gave them back his gun. After the fire in the eyes of my children as they ran to the cellar, the rats ran ahead of them. After I wiped the old woman's face with a dish towel, terrified to reveal a face I knew. After the ravenous dog feasting on blood, just another corpse in Sniper's Alley. After everything, I wanted to write poems like newspaper reports, so heartless, so cold, that I could forget them. Forget them in the same moment that someone might ask me, "Why do you write poems like newspaper reports?"
I like that. It's like life, isn't it? You know. It's from a very honest place.
Saw a little bird sitting in a tree who wanted to start a family. He went tweet, 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 tweet. He was looking for a sheep. Couldn't wait to find the maid. Sat in a tree and sang a plea. He went tweet, 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 tweet. He was looking for a sheep. I've had some very good teachers, and they make you aware of the cliff face that you're standing on. And one teacher said, you have a voice that sounds as if it's coming out of the back end of a drain pipe. So there was a great deal of hard work going on. It's whatever one's voice is a mixture of an accident of nature, because from the neck up, it's just a load of lies. But the rest of you has no idea that it's lying. So that's the punishing part of acting. You have to be courageous with yourself on stage, I think, emotionally. I was talking about this morning, actually, because I watched a while ago, jumping about here, but I watched one of those TED Talks, and it made me think that actually one thing that actors and dancers, singers and musicians do is to actually use both sides of their brain at the same time. Because you have to hand yourself over completely to whatever are the emotional demands of a part. I say forget about acting. And I really mean it at that point in time, because whatever you do as an actor is cumulative. It's about, so I say, go to art galleries, listen to music, know what's happening on the news in the world, and form opinions, develop your taste and judgment, so that when a quality piece of writing is put in front of you, your imagination, which you've nurtured, has something to bounce off. You've got to be very picky about the work you do, I think. And reckless.
Point du jour à nos bosquets rend toute leur parure. Flore plus belle à son retour, l'oiseau reprend du chant d'amour, tout célèbre dans la nature le point du jour. Le point du jour cause pas froid, cause douleur extrême. Que l'espace des nuits est court pour le berger brûlant d'amour, forcé de quitter ceux qui l'aiment au point du jour.
That was brutal. Not that I did it beautifully, and you see that there's vulnerability. It's not often, not even conscious, but I think you can tell when truth is happening, and that's when you start to say the word yes. In a way, you just have to get on the kind of train of it and ride, asking for the truth relentlessly. It's such a personal journey, so you've got to be tender, and if you pull the rug out a little bit, people get upset. There are a lot of young people out there. Sometimes it's like being at a rock concert. These are people living in Manhattan, earning a crust, living normal lives, talking what seems to be normal stuff to each other. But actually, when you start to work on it, incredibly intricate. They were part of my childhood. That's a pretty unique thing to have been part of, and I think we're all still processing what that means, what it meant, and what it will mean.
And to discover that the child in yourself has never really gone away and is only sitting there waiting to be relocated.
If you start saying, that's bad, that's evil, that's good, that's honourable, you don't. You're looking at the people that you're speaking to, you have needs, wants, and you pursue them. Different characters pursue them in different ways. Other people make the judgment. So what does this person want? That would be a dangerous thing to answer, and he was crazy too, in a weird way. Hey-ho. And then he'd get on his motorbike and go home.
And they called it revelatory because it's a masterpiece, really. I mean, I wasn't sure. Yes, but what does this person think, and what kind of, what do you have for breakfast? It's about telling a story. I think that's true, and people, there's a lot of pressure to have some kind of public image in whatever your job is. There is this thing called a shared experience. In many ways, what I'm interested in is the innocence of the response.
I go in and talk or answer questions. I don't really have anything to say until somebody asks me a question.
The important thing is to know nothing.
Everything else is a nightmare. How the hell do I get from the beginning of this sentence to the end of it? How quickly can I get back to the dressing room? And then the slam of the door. Now take the risks. I don't have the sense of enjoyment.
It's learned in the sense that I'm a great believer in training. I know what's happening, or often not happening. Hopefully physically, head to foot, every emotion, and things that you don't even know about, but very much your innocence. If you're fortunate enough to have great teachers, and I was, there's a painful process where they take you apart before putting you back together again. And I was very nervous about training because I thought, it's just a sausage factory and they'll turn me out like everybody else. But that's not it. They actually, the acquisition of something called technique is really something that's there to serve your imagination and to get rid of your bad habits, which get in the way of making your own unique, imaginative response to a text connect to an audience. It's like life, isn't it? At the most serious moments, there could be a laugh just around the corner. I think it's good if there's a laugh around the corner. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damasked red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. These are very, very complicated sentences. You have to breathe them properly, but you've also got to believe what you're saying, and you have to pick up on the rhythms. One of the run-throughs of it in London, after we'd been playing it in Stratford for a while, it was a break and then we put it on again. And so we had a run-through, and Christopher Hampton, the author, was there, and at the end of it, Howard Davis, who also directed that, notes, gave some notes, and then he said to Christopher, would you like to say anything, Christopher? And Christopher said, well, I'd just like to say how moved I am, because I had no idea I'd written half of that. And the same is true with this. You know, people are saying, well, we didn't know that there was this depth in the play. We're not making it up. It's there if you look for it. Well, yes, I mean, obviously, because there's a worldwide audience. But it also makes a difference in terms of your work on stage. It's taught me, I think I'm better at stage work because of film work. Trust your listening faculties. You know, it's very, when a camera is put onto the face of somebody who's truly listening, I think it's very interesting. That you need to see them receiving some information. And so I learned that, and about stillness and truthfulness. Yeah, I think, well, it's in close-up, that's the other thing, you know. On stage, it's like you're always in a wide shot. Well, and so in any way, what I've discovered, having done a few years of film, is, and there are a few sequences in this play that I'm doing now, where almost nothing seems to be happening. And there is one sequence in the play where there is actually 2 minutes of complete silence, because they have this game where if they're rowing, which they do rather a lot, one of them calls out this word solux, and it means that they now have to have 2 minutes of silence. And that actually takes place on stage. So there are 2 minutes when nobody says a thing. And you've got no option but to play it for real, and to hold 1,400 people's attention with silence. It's not easy, but film work gives you a little bit of courage to do that. Well, when I did Die Hard, because I had never ever made a film before, so I was a complete innocent. And John McTiernan, God bless him, tolerated me. I think I was cheap. Yeah, and I was English, and I had been playing in Les Liaisons Dangereuses, and I think it had a kind of a quality that they needed for the film. Between us, you know, we made it much more interesting. It was a very, very happy experience. The prospect was pretty terrifying, but then I suppose experience tells you, and it proved to be the case, that the wonderful thing about film is that you're surrounded by experts, because if they don't do their job well, they'd never make it. So you've got this unbelievable bank of support behind you, and in a way, a lot of the work has been done in pre-production. Once you actually hit the first day of shooting, you just watch. He said to me once, he said, Alan, be more subtle, do more.
This will be a healthy reminder to me that subtlety isn't everything.
I like the idea of jumping off a cliff. I like a bit of danger to be involved in the work, you know, some size to the challenge. So that was definitely there because it was such a big movie to be involved in, and the challenge was inside that big, kind of broad adventure movie to make it a person.
It's fun, you know, you get let off the leash and you run around like a mad dog. And because they are very successful movies, they get a lot of publicity. That's the beginning and ending of it, but it isn't the beginning and ending of what I want to do.
More, different, better?
Probably not, but you know, I suppose never say never. It's just that I'm not sure that there's anywhere else to go after The Sheriff of Nottingham. There are various things I have to organize around the fact that I will almost definitely be shooting another Harry Potter. So when Harry gets to be 18 and leaves school, that's it. And she's already written the last paragraph of the last book, and it's locked away in a safe. So she's a terrifically interesting woman, yeah. Well, how could you not be when you were a single parent with no money coming in, trying to feed your kids and writing these books in coffee bars in Glasgow, in exercise books by hand with the kids in the stroller and not quite knowing how to feed them. before I said I would do it, I said I have to talk to her. And I rang her, and she was with her sister at the time. She said, I can't talk now. So that's how much she kept it all to herself. She said, we'll talk tomorrow. And then we spoke the next day, and she gave me one small piece of information that was just a very small, and it certainly wasn't, and this will happen, and then that will happen, and this is how it finishes. I never knew any of that. It was a unique experience, and I wouldn't have missed anything for it, and I'm proud of the fact that we all took it dead seriously, and there was no messing about. Well, there was a little bit. Well, that's a great compliment. I'm not sure that I'm very good at anything else, and the thing is that acting, the more I do it, the more mysterious the whole thing becomes, because the more you do it, the more you realize that it's about listening and not doing, and it's about handing yourself over and being as open as possible to other influences rather than imposing yourself on something. And so you try to get more and more open, and then more and more things start to just happen. I can teach you how to bewitch the mind and ensnare the senses. I can tell you how to bottle fame, brew glory, and even to stop her in death. And then again, maybe some of you have come to Hogwarts in possession of abilities so formidable that you feel confident enough to not pay attention. Mr. Potter, our new celebrity. You don't know? Well, let's try again. Where, Mr. Potter, would you look if I asked you to find me a bezoar? Clearly, fame isn't everything.
Do you have any idea how serious this is? Not to mention the damage you inflicted on a whomping willow that's been on these grounds since before you were born. Silence! I assure you that were you in Slytherin and your fate rested with me, the both of you would be on the train home tonight. These boys have flouted the decree for the restriction of underage wizardry.
Perhaps Potter and his friends were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. However, the circumstances are suspicious. Perhaps it would be prudent to first teach the students to block unfriendly spells. We'll be sending Potter to the hospital wing in a matchbox. Might I suggest someone from my own house? Malfoy, perhaps?
Turn to page 394. Suffice it to say that your professor finds himself incapable of teaching at the present time. Turn to page 394.
Which one of you can tell me the difference between an animagus and a werewolf? No one. How disappointing. That is the second time you've spoken out of turn, Miss Granger. Are you incapable of restraining yourself, or do you take pride in being an insufferable know-it-all? 5 points from Gryffindor.
Loss of limb will not excuse you. Page 394.
Strutting about the castle. Turn out your pockets. Turn out your pockets. What's this? Really? Open it. Reveal your secrets. Read it. Go on. Well, well. Lupin. Out for a little walk in the moonlight.
Are we? I have just now confiscated a rather curious artifact from Mr. Potter. Take a look, Lupin. It's supposed to be your area of expertise, clearly. It's full of dark magic. Master, I too find it difficult to believe this mere coincidence. However, if we are to truly discover the meaning of these events, perhaps we should, for the time being, let them unfold. Congratulations, your performance in the Black Lake was inspiring. Gillyweed, am I correct? Ingenious. A rather rare herb, gillyweed. Not something found in your everyday garden. Nor is this. Know what it is? Veritaserum. 3 drops of this, and you know who himself would spill his darkest secrets. The use of it on a student is, regrettably, forbidden. However, should you ever steal from my personal stores again, my hand might just slip over your morning pumpkin juice. Put it down, Bella. We mustn't touch what isn't ours. As it so happens, I'm aware of your situation, Narcissa. Your sister doubts me. Understandable. Over the years, I've played my part well. So well, I've deceived one of the greatest wizards of all time. And then she gave me one very small piece of information, which I always have vowed I would never, ever repeat, even though the books are now done and everything. So I won't repeat it. It wasn't a fact. It was just a kind of clue that there's something that meant it was possible for me to think he was other than. It wasn't even that she said that. It was just made him a little... there was something more human. There's a level of silence in an audience sometimes, and you can feel it as an actor. And certainly there have been times when the screening of this film, when you know that the energy at work from the actors and all the technicians that I've talked about, and especially the writer, mean that you've got a captive audience sitting in the dark being told a story. This is a very ancient and wonderful thing, and it's terrible if we lose this. You know, as times change and everybody sits at home with their huge screen and their 5 seats and their surround sound, and they don't actually go out and sit together with a huge bunch of other people on a kind of once upon a time level. It's a very weird thing that happens. It's a bit like a kind of microcosm of what I've just talked about, because on the film set you may have a scene between 2 people, but there's probably about 30 or 40 people with clipboards all around it. Everybody kind of knows. There's a common concentration happens, and thank God the plane didn't fly over, or the sound man didn't come out from behind his bush saying, sorry, we got to go back. We were all brought up knowing how to make a fire and knowing how to iron a shirt. But that was our reality. It's a very Welsh thing, that side of my family, and you know, families knit together, so a bit like a film crew came into operation, aunts and uncles and huge support system. Whatever piece of my brain is missing, I don't know, it's never ever thought that way about, you know, future income. Never really entered my head. No, all I really remember from that time is exactly where the letterbox was in London, where I posted that letter saying, please can I have a form for auditioning, and I absolutely remember posting it. For whatever reason, I was given the title role in it. See how amazing that it sticks in your mind. The title role in a play called King Grizzlybeard. And I remember my mother cutting out a triangle out of a carpet, and that was stuck on my chin.
but it was the first time I'd felt, I don't know whether it's about feeling the power you can have as an actor, but it goes back to what I was saying about that silence. You're involved in a story and then there's a load of people in front of you and they've gone really quiet. Good luck.